Okay, when are we going to move the mountain? All together. Today, let's have a little choir, shall we? Today is the day. With a push, with a shove, with a going around it, with the fluidity of water, with the I've stood, and I've hit my head against this mountain about all I need to. So I no longer have to be curious about why my head is bleeding. I'm going to have to find a different route. Anybody willing? Willing? You had just enough of suffering, maybe? Let's have a little wave. Live streamers, join us. We're going to do the wave today. When you hear something today that you believe is a proverb or something you can incorporate in your life, will be a big amen. Amen. Today's the day. Living well. You got a little card when you came in. You got it? It's got a secret message on it for you. Guess what mine says? Be open to a new way of living. Amen. Today's the day to be open to a new way of living. That means that when I leave here today, when something doesn't go my way, what then? Pain or peace? When someone crosses me, challenge or stay in freedom? And oh, the allure to straighten them out. Oh, the allure. So one of your cards, I bet, says, lead me not into the temptation of mind. Anybody get that one? Lead me not into the temptation of mind. Because then what would the mind say? What's the old pattern in the mind when it doesn't go your way or they cross you? How does the mind inform you? What would it lead you to do? Criticize, anger, retaliate, get even, keep score, hold a grudge. Tell the people in the bookstore. Finger point, nitpick, fault find. Now, what happens to your spirit when you just even hear this? What happens? So our luminosity dial gets turned way, way down. There's no tail wagging in that opportunity. So how am I going to keep my tail wagging here a little more? So people told me this week, I got a little feedback that says, I love listening, Martha. I listen to you talk, and when things are not going well and I can't get myself out of something, I just put in Martha Creek. Now, these are free podcasts, 150 of them. There's 75 free videos. So if this teaching that comes through me is relevant to you and meaningful to you and helpful to you, then keep the teaching close. And it's right on that website, marthacreek.com. So you can listen to it and embody it and begin to get some depth to it. And she said, sometimes I just need a to-do list. I need a little to-do list. So I've brought one for you. You ready? Based on your Living Well series, and this is a launch of it, that these are some things that we can apply today, maybe today, this week. Some of us haven't suffered enough. So don't let me take your suffering from you too quick. And if you don't want your suffering taken from you, be sure not to come to that workshop this afternoon, because I am dedicated to taking as much suffering as I can, because I want to be free of suffering too. It's no life for me to live in fear. It's no life for me to live in conflict and stress. So then I am practicing this. I'm applying this. And then the people that gather together are in a hurry for peace, in a hurry for a new way of being. And that's what we'll do in there from 12 to 2, so I hope you'll stay. And if someone's not here that you believe may have suffered just enough, call them or text them and tell them to run over here between 12 and 2. How many of you still have toxic people, toxic personalities, toxic attitudes? So begin to think about that. That whatever the cause of that is that would continue us to engage in something like that, that after today, I'm going to look to be minimizing that some. I'm going to be real mindful about how I'm feeling, that every time I gather with her or gather with him, that I feel worse when I leave, that my spirit is drained out of me, that I leave lethargic even, or worried, doubtful, not uplifted. These are indicators. So just like I wouldn't put myself too close to a fire, that the heat of that fire would inform me too close, back up here, give space here. I'm going to do that now with some of these people and some of these attitudes and moods and some of these patterns that people are running, often without awareness that they're running them, but I have put myself in relationship with it without really looking at the consequences to my spirit, or the consequences to my energy in doing so. So think about that. It could be what looks like innocent water cooler gossip. And the second that I noticed my luminosity dial draining, that I'm going to excuse myself and take a path that would be more living well for me. More well living. When I notice a topic coming up that is bound to end in conflict, that's not going to go well, I already know where they stand, and I know that we disagree, and if I don't want to enter that same disagreement that we've been entering for the last 15 years, then I'm going to set that topic aside. Say, I know that we disagree on this. And I really can't see any benefit to picking up that old worn out rope and going back to war in that again. So something that would minimize that for us, for matters of living well. Anybody here self-blame? That regardless of what happened, now most of us do it if you didn't raise your hand, because those of us that are into transformation, into creating a world that works for all, that have said we'll be pioneers for this, we're the ones that can do this. Most of us got a helper gene. Have you noticed? We didn't just get a helper gene, we got a whole strand of helper genes. What's the consequences of that? Of the tendency to overhelp, or the tendency to do for others what they can actually do for themselves, or the tendency to take responsibility for whatever happens, even though it actually was not my responsibility. But we get so uncomfortable, so discomforted when there's blame in the field or anger turns up or something like that. Us helper types are more apt to take the blame for it. Then I should have done this, I should have done that, I shouldn't have said that, I should have thought of that. Can you relate? So this means then, in my well-living practice, to absolutely stop it. And the second, the I should, I would have, I could have. No, I don't know yet what I'm going to do, but I know what I'm not going to do. And that I'm on a fast now from self-blame. I'm on a fast now from self-hate and recrimination and raking myself over the coals. So maybe after 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years for some of us, that's just enough of that to say less self-hate, less self-blame, self-recrimination. This is kind of ironic and funny too. Your speaker next week is on how to get happiness. And I'm going to invite you and ask you to practice this week to stop chasing happiness. You can pick it back up next Sunday. So what's the consequences on you when you chase happiness? When you believe you're going to be happy, that happiness is possible, that I should be happy 100% of the time. Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that it was possible or you could be or should be happy 100% of the time? Where'd that come from? And maybe a better question is it true? Is it true that you can be happy 100% of the time? Altogether? No. This is a breakthrough. And then what are the consequences of us chasing happiness? What's the consequences on you from chasing happiness? Sadness, disappointment, despair, depression, grief, worry even. So who would you be? What would it be like if you stopped chasing happiness? And close your eyes if it helps. See if you can get an embodiment of this. If you suddenly, just for today, just stop chasing happiness, what would you experience? More peace, neutrality, equanimity, balance, centeredness, openness. Does that sound a little happier to you? So it's the chasing of happiness that is preventing us from experiencing happiness. Loco. So then when somebody says, hey, I'm looking for happiness, what would you say? Don't bother. It comes and goes like the breath. To say I'm going to be happy all the time would be like saying I'm only going to inhale. I'm not going to exhale anymore. That's so overrated. Versus, no, I'll have times of happiness and times of unhappiness. There'll be times of kindness and unkindness and times of respect and disrespect and all that is, if you believe what we teach. And until we include all of this, we're at war with it. Until it's all included, we're in conflict with it. And then in the consequences of it. Okay, big deep breath. This will finish some of you off. That's my job. To stop trying to impress people. To give up impressing people. Think about all the energy you wake up with in the morning. Well, some of you here. But pretend it's 100%. You know that like our phones, when we plug them in, they go back to 100% and charge. So we're charged up at 100% when we wake up. Think about how much of that energy is spent wanting to impress people, wanting them to think something of you, wanting them to see you as a somebody. So what could you do with that energy if it didn't go that way? What could you do with that energy if it wasn't leaked off day after day after day, and then decades of it? Create, innovate, resource, Use the energy to move you in the direction of your own goals for your life. Right, yes. Amen. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm going to use the energy that I have, the vitality that I have to actually move me in the direction of my goals for my life. And it's not a sane goal to use my energy to get people, for me to impress people. Because they're impressed like that, then they're unimpressed, just like that. So then I'm vulnerable to that. Versus they're going to be impressed and unimpressed. Impressed again, unimpressed again. And if I put myself in that, it's like being in a blender. Then wondering why I don't have energy, or I'm exhausted, or didn't move myself any further toward the goals I have for my own life and how I want to live. Then the next one is dropping this, loosening up this victim mentality. Does it sound easy? A victimization, it's a very hardwired, it's the oldest archetype there is in the species. This notion of victimization, you've heard me say it, it's probably standing right here. You know, when we die, here lays Martha Creek's grave. Here lies Martha. She had issues. That still be on the headstone, you know. Here lies Martha. She had dramas. Here lies Martha. She could complain. Now, what happens to your spirit when you hear this? Versus we're writing this today. So then instead, it's like, here lies Martha. She snapped out of some of that. Here lies Martha. Instead of issues, she had ideas. Instead of complaints, she had contributions. You, who had, instead of dramas, had determination, had desire, went in the direction of that. Had a new way of being, a richer way of being in the world. If and to the degree we can continue to loosen this. Because see, it loves to be offended. Have you noticed? Like it's on the search for something to take offense to. Like the rain. Like, oh, the rain, my hair. Like it'll find anything in the world to take offense from. And the brain scientists now have proven this. We get high off that. We get high off being offended. So it's an addiction to be offended. So it'll be no little thing to short circuit that. It'll be no little thing to observe. Eckhart Tolle says to observe the offense and not do a thing about it. Just let it burn off, so to speak. And to practice this, I see some of you in big exhales. I love exhales. Okay, how you doing? Got a few more? To drop the pursuit of perfection. Like there's any such thing. Because we've made up what perfect is. Now, it'll be perfect if the plane I'm booked on tomorrow afternoon leaves on time. I want that. I need that. That should happen. And then life says, hey, it left late. Or it was canceled. Now, where's the problem? Leaving is perfection. Leaving on time is perfection. Then life says, nope. This is perfection. It left right on time. Not what I had in mind. Perfect instead. After all I've done for God. So this is what we're dealing with. Then they should call me back. People should call you back. Right? Right? And then do they? Rarely, particularly if they're under 30. They've not figured out what those buttons are for. Children should be well behaved, especially if they're mine. My spouse should agree with me. Amen. And then do they? All together? No. No, they do not. So where's my power in this? In how I relate to that. How I relate to that holds all the power in the universe. And my well-living is contingent on that little point of possibility that I choose again. Instead of that old patterned way of reactivity, that old patterned way of reaction, instead of like, what would a sane person do in this situation? What would sensible action look like in this situation? And let me go in that direction for a change. Instead of repeating what I've been doing for 50 some odd years, wondering why it didn't shift or hasn't changed yet. And then grudges. Any of you study the course? I heard lesson 78 on Mother's Day, and I've had a head-to-toe shift. Now I've looked at that lesson, practiced it, and that day it went somewhere new in me. And the lesson is about setting aside grievances. Setting aside grievances for what? If I set aside grievances, what's possible for me? Miracles. Miracles. Miracles available to me only to the degree that I set aside grievances. So who's withholding that from me? With my unwillingness to set it aside. And then that woundology that's so powerful. Like you don't know how much it hurt. It's like, you're right, I don't. I can't know how much you've hurt. I can't know how much you've suffered. I can only know what I've experienced. And I know that the grievances are like carrying an old rotten potato sack around. And then somewhere along the way, we've had just enough of it. Just enough, and let it be today that we actually set aside those grievances and continue to do this daily. Before I go to sleep, before I leave the bed, the chair, that all the grievances that gathered up and accumulated and Velcroed to me today must be unvelcroed and transformed, set aside again, because I'm interested in miracles. And I'm interested in experiencing them and making them, being a miracle maker. And I cannot do it and continue to stockpile grudges and grievances and wonder why my life feels heavy. And then the pursuit of material things. Have you had enough of that? Anybody here that's realized that you got everything, almost everything you always wanted, and it wasn't what you thought it would get you? So most of us at this stage of our life are looking to right-size our life. Instead of having that much, it's like this much will do. This much took a lot of energy. This took a lot of energy of money to keep this up. This took a lot of energy of my mind to track it. Now, I'll be doing a course later this year through Unity's Institute and Spiritual Explorers called Right Sizing Your Life. right-sizing your life. And so we'll look at some of this and maybe deal with some of this. And as I was researching this class, I've already taught it once, I showed a video and it said by the time we're 60, we've accumulated an average of 300,000 items. So think of the energy it takes to track them, to maintain them, to upkeep them. And then the thing that cooked my goose, and I hope it'll cook some of yours, was by the time I'm 60 years old, I've spent 1.5 years, according to this research, 1.5 years of an average life has been spent looking for things. You're welcome. Looking for things. So it's like, I don't want to be on my life looking back and seeing that 1.5 years of this precious life was spent like that. I cannot do that and be in integrity with myself. So I've got to do whatever's necessary to get that righted again and right-sized again. So take a big deep breath and think about what you have received here today. And thanks for this space and this place, the technology, all this service, all these volunteers, this rich leader here. Thank you for inviting me, honey, back here. All of you that make this possible. Because we're in an industry, the industry of church, for 20 consecutive years and likely longer, but the research covers that, is doing what? 10,000 churches a year closing in the U.S. 10,000. And what are you doing here at Unity Village Chapel at the same time? So turn to somebody and say, we're miracle makers. We are miracle makers. We are miracle makers. So your presence here matters. Your participation here matters. Your commitments here matters. Your giving here matters. You're watching us and joining. You're part of miracle making clan here. Those of you through the live stream and those of you that come back and come back and come back, that we're going to be the people that are referred to as history, in history, that looks back and says, you know, there was this strange little group of people that believed something different. And they were innovators. And they were disruptors. And they were midwives to a spirituality that had longevity and sustainability. And that while the majority of the other is dying, was a part of something that was living and living well. And I bow to you for your part of that. And I bow to you for your calling that puts you there and to the source of that calling that ensures its fulfillment. I love you and bless you, and I'll see you over there, the activity center, and stay for the workshop if you can.